Hi guys, I'm here with Shauna Lawless, the author of the Gael song trilogy and Daughter of No Worlds, and soon to be The Sun and the Serpent. And I think that comes out November US and September UK.
Yes, that's correct. Yes.
Oh, I have not read Daughter of No Worlds yet, but I am so excited and thank you so much for taking the time to talk with me today.
Oh, absolutely. No worries at all. Thank you for asking me on. It's always lovely to speak about my books.
Yes, and I absolutely love your books. I have been bullying everyone into reading them. I finished them a few weeks ago, and I am just so excited to get to talk about your writing process, what inspired you to be a writer, and any maybe future projects that you may have.
Yep.
All right, so first things first is tell me a little bit about yourself. How did you get into writing? Was you always wanted to be a writer, or is it kind of like a new thing for you?
Well, I was always under reading and I was always into writing short stories. Like as a child, that would have been reading and writing stories were my main hobbies. But for me, they were always hobbies, if that makes sense. I definitely did not think a career as being an author was something that would happen for someone like me. Like it just didn't seem to be like a credible career. I don't know why. Maybe just a bit of lacking in confidence or something. And so I went off and I did finance and I did other things. But writing was always in the background. Probably petered away a little bit when I had my kids, just again, like it was a time issue. Um, and when I turned 30, my husband's uncle said to me, where's your stories? Have you got any new ones? And I said, no, I don't have any new stories. I've no time. And he just said, oh, that's a real shame because I always loved reading your stories. You're really good at it and you shouldn't not do something that, you enjoy and you're good at. And that kind of stayed with me a little bit. And the next evening, me and my husband came up with a plan where I would write every other night and he would do the kids' bedtime routine. And then the next night, I would do the kids' bedtime routine. And then he would have an hour and a half to do what he wanted to do. And that's what really got me back into writing properly. Because I think, like any sort of talent or any skill or any art, practice is required. You do have to stick at it. And so I find once I got into that every other night, I had an hour and a half. I really got into it then. But I was still working. I still like had my kids, and it was really again, it was still a hobby until I finished The Children of Gods and Fighting Men. And then I thought that was maybe publishable. I did have a
And
novel
what?
before that, which I had written, and it was not publishable. It was like 230,000 words. It was huge, and not good, but actually you learn a lot from writing something rubbish. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, so The Children of Gods and Fighting Men was the book I wrote after that, and I thought, yes, I think this is something that could be published.
It definitely could have been published.
Yeah.
I love that book so much. It was one of those books didn't want to put down. Like I was just like, oh, I got to know what happens. And so I love that you had your uncle there because like I'm a teacher and sometimes you just need someone to kind of believe in you, you know. And so
Yes.
I love that he was that person for you, and I love that I got to read them. So I'm like, go, uncle.
Yeah, no, do you know, I think that's what it is. I think, modern life is difficult. It's difficult when you have young children and you're working and, you're trying to do all the things. And I think when I was younger and when I wrote, I had weekends to write. And that to me was what being a writer was. Um, but it's not possible to write like that, unless it's your full-time job. And it was not my full-time job because, you've got kids, you've to pay the bills and all of these things. And so it was really having someone there that kind of gave me that positive affirmation enough that it made me rethink how to do it, if that
Hmm.
makes sense.
Yeah.
And coming to that realization where, no, I don't have whole weekends just to dedicate to writing anymore. I can have an hour and a half every other evening. That
Hmm.
has to be enough. We have to try to make this work. And it did work.
I also was going to ask you if you had kids because I have kids, and I know when I was reading it, I was like, this is written by somebody who has mother experience for sure. I really enjoyed that aspect of Children of Gods and Fighting Men. You get to see not only like different strengths of like women, you also get to see like different strengths of motherhood. And so that was a
Yes.
really fun for me to read too.
Yes, no, that definitely is a really strong theme. And Gormla and Fola, in some ways, like they're the complete opposite, but they also
Mm-hmm.
are experiencing almost sometimes exactly the same issues.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so motherhood is a theme I definitely explored as to all the mixed messages I was getting as to how to be a good mother. So you have Fola, who's very much wants the whole world to be better. So not
Mm-hmm.
just her nephew who she's raising to be safe, but everyone to be
Mm-hmm.
safe and this to be like a good place for everybody to live. Whereas Gormla is very much, I just want my son to get ahead. I literally don't care how anyone else's children are faring, how they're doing. My son, that's it. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, and so they are kind of the two maybe opposing advices you get as a mother. You kind of want
Mm-hmm.
your kid to get ahead, but like, or do you want all everyone's kids to get ahead? Do you know it's
Mm-hmm.
it's a bit of a conflict, and so they're the two different sides of, I guess, that mothering experience.
No, and you had a lot of different characters kind of went through like obviously like a lot of them are raising children, and I really enjoyed that aspect because sometimes in fantasy it's so male dominated, and so you don't often get a perspective of a mom. You get the perspective of like the child usually and how they are with their mom. So I also thought that was really refreshing as well.
Yeah, yeah, I think so. I think sometimes mothers in literature, especially like fantasy, can be a bit one-dimensional. They're either the kind of
Yes.
lovely mum who is very mumsy and just does everything, or um, yeah, and usually she dies
Yeah.
pretty early
Yeah.
on in the story, and then yeah, you're right, the child has to go on and venture into the world themselves. So yeah, I wanted the women to hang around in this story.
Yes, and I enjoy reading fantasy books by women so much. They usually are what I gravitate to, and so I definitely had seen this on my friend's list, your books, and I was like, I'll read it. I don't usually read that much historic fantasy, but I really think that that has changed for me because I was thinking about it. My favorite TV show is The Crown that's on Netflix. It's like a
Yeah,
historical, you know what I'm talking
yeah,
about, and
I've seen it. Yeah.
I really like that. I love how, and after, by the way, if you are watching this and you have not read this series, do not Google anything that happens in the historic because Shauna Lawless is very historically accurate. So do not Google any of that. But after I finished it, well, actually, while I was reading it, I had Googled Mercad McBrien and I was like, oh,
Yeah, no, don't. Spoilers. The only thing is,
yes,
though, I would say, like, this did happen in the 10th century. Everyone's dead by now.
yes, yeah, by now.
Yeah, yeah. Um,
Yes,
yeah. So I know a lot of people have said that to me where they started to Google and they were like, oh no, like, retreat,
yes,
retreat. Yeah, like, don't read
yes.
anymore.
I was like, it's fantasy. She made up her own ending. No, she did not, so do not Google any of that. But I really love like when you because like there's not a whole bunch of information. It was 10th century Ireland, right? Like there's just bits and pieces and folklore and stories that have been passed down. And so I loved that you were able to take, like X, Y, and Z and you got to fill in all of the parts and it felt real, even though like there's magical beings. And I really felt like that was just like, the magical beings were a main part of the story, but I really felt like the plot of, like what was happening was like the forefront. And I really enjoyed that too. It was like, like almost like magical realism. Because like not everyone that was like humans, they didn't really know about these magical beings like being, among them.
Yes, and because the fantasy is based on Irish mythology, so a lot of Irish mythology is woven in to
Hmm.
our historical stories and our sagas. And my granny really believed in a lot of Irish mythology. Like, it isn't just like old stories.
Hmm.
She would have believed in like the fairy people and things like that. And a lot of people of her generation would have. So it's not. as fantastical, actually, to me, as maybe it would seem to other people. I don't know if that makes
Yeah.
sense. But that's why it was so easy to weave into the history, because the people at that
Mhm.
time lived that way and kind of believed in some of those things. Like Christianity had come into Ireland, but it wasn't really taken very strictly at that point in time. In fact,
Mhm.
kind of the religion and the culture was sort of a mishmash between Christianity and the pagan traditions. And what's actually funny is whenever you do read the historical sources of the time, there is magic in them. And
Mhm.
so these historical sources are what you would read in a textbook, but the textbook leaves the magic out. And so
Mm.
I have put the magic back in, if that makes sense. So
Yes.
I think that's why it works so well. Is it's not like I haven't added dragons and I haven't added like elves and stuff. It's Irish mythology.
Yes.
That's in the historical setting.
And it was really fun for me to kind of Google at the end and about like the different factions. I cannot say the descendants. I know that we have the Formarians, right? And they're just
Fomorians,
kind of
yeah,
like they're just like the bad guys in Irish mythology, right?
yeah.
Like they just kind of want to destroy humanity. And then we have, go ahead and say it for me.
Oh yes, sorry, the Tuatha Dé Danann, who are
Yes, I
the like Irish gods who helped the mortals of human defeat the Fomorians.
and I love that, because I was kind of like good versus evil, but when you're reading them from your perspective, it's like they're as good and bad in both factions, and I really
Yes.
love that.
Yes, and that's the way the world is, right? In
Yes.
any sort of group, any group, um, there is heroes in both, and there's villains in both, and people use the good sometimes of certain causes, and they twist them to that suit their own purposes and all of that. And that was very key for me to show that. uh, Especially like one of the themes is obviously like manipulation of religion to kind of
Hmm.
get what you want, and I think that's something that's prevalent today.
Yes.
As is, some of the female characters have partners or male husbands who are not nice to them, and there's a lot of manipulation there. And some characters are better at dealing with that than others. And to me, that's all real life. Like, I think, when you think my story is 1,000 years ago, like it's in the 10th century, that's the link, is how we are as people. And I don't think that's changed
Hmm.
very much.
No, you're definitely right on that. I do have a question for you. You are stranded on a desert island,
Oh.
and you have to be stuck with either Tomas or Gormla. You got to pick one.
Oh, Gormla, easy. Thomas is horrible. Like, there's like literally nothing redeeming about him. He would leave me. He would go off and sort himself out. I think if I was a bit of banter and a bit of crack, Gormla might keep me around for a bit just for amusement. She
You would
wouldn't
have
kill
to be
me right away.
useful.
Yeah, yeah, I'd
You'd have
have
to
to
be
be
useful.
useful. Yeah,
You
yes.
could not annoy her at all.
No, no. But Thomas, you'd be gone instantly.
Yes, you have such a fan base that loves Gormla so much, and that is not me. I do not like Gormla. I think partly because like I was a mom reading it, and some of the things that we're not going to say any spoilers because I want people to read it, but some of the things that happen, I was side eyeing Gormla so much, but I have so many friends that love her so much, and I love her as a character. I think that she's so well done. Like for you to have a character that you do not like, that has to be well written, like for you to have those feelings. But she does give me heavy Cersei Lannister inspirations. Did you have Cersei as kind of like an inspiration for her, or was she just kind of your creation, or was there other people maybe you had inspired for her?
Yes, no, definitely. Like Cersei's definitely an inspiration, and like she's one that a lot of people will cite because
Mhm.
she's like another fantasy queen. She's quite ruthless and similar to Gormla. But actually, there's lots. If you were to read his history in the kind of 10th to 12th centuries, maybe 12th to 15th, actually. If you look at a lot of Europe, there's lots of very badly behaved women, and George R. R. Martin himself like reads a lot of medieval history, and he's based characters on historical people and events and things like that. So yeah, so Cersei for sure, but I would also say um book Cersei and TV Cersei are slightly different.
Yes.
And so I know when I was watching the TV show, a lot of people would be like, oh, Cersei, like her redeeming feature is that she loves her children and that she's clever. And I'd watch the show and be like, she does not love her children. She uses
Hmm.
her children and she isn't clever.
Hmm.
She's just good at manipulation, I
Hmm.
guess. And so so I kind of find sometimes, and I think that's a TV show, that's not the books. Um, with Gormla, I really wanted her to be clever. I wanted
Hmm.
her to be like the smartest person in the room, but just that people would not listen to her.
Yeah.
But also, I did want it to be clearer that she loves it when her children love her.
Yes.
I'm not entirely sure that she actually does love her children. They're they're
Yeah.
they're
No.
yeah, they're vehicles for her a lot of the time.
Hmm.
And sometimes, like, because me and my friend actually were having a discussion about Gormla and another character that's in Son of the Serpents, which is book
Hmm.
5, and we were kind of talking about sociopath versus psychopath. And so for me, Gormla is a bit of a sociopath,
Yeah.
and love is something that's attached to what she can get
Hmm.
rather than always maybe being a true feeling. But she does have flashes of it being a true feeling
Hmm.
as well, which makes her complex, I guess. And I would also
Yes.
add, and I think this is a reason why people do like her, is that she's funny, she's clever, and the guys are all doing all this bad stuff as well, right? So
Yes.
she is a product of her environment, and she's just playing the game, I guess.
Hmm.
Um,
Yes.
which is why like she's so entertaining to write. Like I love writing a Gormley chapter because I never know quite what she's going to do, and sometimes I am shocked by the things that she comes up with. And she is like a character. If I'm writing something for her, that in my head just goes, "No, I wouldn't do that." Like she's very like opinionated, um, and so she's fun. But yes, but she's not like she's not a good character.
Right.
Like, and if the question you asked, like, who would you rather be with? Like, Gormla would turn against you in a second if it was suddenly in her interest to
Hmm.
do so. But that's
Yes.
that's fun, I think. It's fun to have a character like that.
It really is, and I love the duality of her too. For me, she was just more once just we'll talk after and I'll tell you exactly the point where I was like, mm-mm, no, no, she made me mad. But I want to go back because I can tell that you have read Game of Thrones, right?
Yes.
So, what are some other books that you really enjoyed maybe growing up? Did you always read fantasy? What are some books recently that you have enjoyed? Just tell me all about your reading.
Okay, so definitely my first fantasy series that I got into, my brother gave me The Hobbit and The Lord of the
Mhm.
Rings. I read them when I was about 10 or 11. And then I read them again when I was 14, and it was like a different book when I read it when I
Mhm.
was 14, because I think some of the more complex threads stayed with me. I'm a big, massive fan of Aragorn, as a kind of that male hero. I kind of don't like some modern romance where you have kind of toxic boyfriends who are. I don't mind it if they are, if the toxic behavior is called out or it's displayed that way. I don't like it sometimes when toxic behavior is labeled as romance, because to me it's not.
Mhm.
So for me, I always, if you're having a romantic male figure, Aragorn is like the gold standard for me. Um, kind of like honorable and all of that. And maybe I'm a bit older, like I want a book husband, I don't want a book boyfriend anymore.
I love that. I could tell that was Murkat kind of is inspired by him then.
A little bit, yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
I would say so. So definitely, like, I love Lord of the Rings. I've read it quite a few times. But I was really into classical literature when I was younger. So The Count of Monte Cristo, War and Peace, those kind of stories, Austen, like Jane Eyre, um, some Charles Dickens, just anything. I literally would have read anything when I was younger. Um, and then, sorry, and then also a lot of historical fiction. So probably that is why historical fantasy was my choice of genre, because I love fantasy so much and I love historical fiction so much. So in terms of historical fiction, I love Joseph O'Connor. I love Hilary Mantel, who did Wolf Hall, and Philippa Gregory, who wrote The Other Boleyn Girl, would be maybe one of her most famous books. Yeah, so just I read a lot, and that's something I would say to anyone that's an aspiring author. Is reading is really the best thing that you can do. Like read a lot and read widely. Like don't maybe just stick to one or two genres. Do try to read out of that as well.
Yeah, no, totally. I love that every time I talk to a fantasy author, always it's Lord of the Rings, and that is just it's just sparked so many fantasy authors
Yeah.
into writing. And I always have to tell, John Glenn was actually very disappointed in me that I have only read the first Lord of the Rings, and that was really recently. And I love fantasy, and I definitely just need to read the rest of them.
Do you know it's so slow paced compared to books today, especially the first book, because you have the whole like Tom Bombadil in the forest,
Yes.
that like yeah. And yeah, I think when I was 11, I stopped there for a while, and my brother made me continue. He's like, no, just keep going. And now I love that section. Um, but yeah, when I was younger, I was like, the plot stopped. What's happening? But what I would say is the momentum really, like, oh my God, it just picks up so much in the second book. The second book is my favorite of the three.
Oh.
Um,
Well, I was listening to the Andy Serkis one, and I really did like that narration. He did such a
yes.
good job.
Yeah, I have that narration as well. I got it from my son. So he could, if he was going out walking, he could listen to it because we love the Lord of the Rings movies. So we
Yes.
normally watch it every Christmas. We have the extended edition, which is the only way to watch it. I actually cannot even like I couldn't bring myself to watch the theatrical releases now because I would miss the extended parts. So we're huge Lord of the Ring fans here. So I was trying to, my son's 15 and I was trying to get him into reading and I was like, we could try some audiobooks and that might help. So
Yep.
I have the Andy Serkis books on audio.
Yes, I think as a mom you want your kids to be big readers too, and I teach high schoolers, and so like always trying to get people into reading. And I think audiobooks is such a good gateway for people to get into reading, especially when they're fun, like Andy Serkis. I think he does such a good job. It's such a fun reading experience.
Oh gosh, yeah, like any way you can get kids into reading is so important.
Yes.
The modern world is tough as a parent, and that's one of the issues is there's just so much grabbing your kids' attention. When I was growing up, we had three TV channels. That was it. Um, and after that, like, you maybe had like a tape player where you could play a movie or something, but there was a lot more time available for reading. And I feel that reading for young people is kind of the art form that has come, like it's been taken away a little bit. And so you really have to say to your children, this is really important. Like, I think ability to read and assess text and to understand
Mhm.
context and to read other people's experiences in the world that could be very different to yours. These are all like the most important skills that you could possibly teach your children. Um,
Totally.
yeah. And so, yeah, so I reading is so important in this house. It is hard. I have three boys. I kind of find it's difficult sometimes to find books for teenage boys, and I've had a bit of pushback. I've said that before. Um, but like I mean it's the truth. Boys in their early teens do not dig romance, and
Mm.
that's a lot of what's being offered. So you have to search. There are books out there, of course there are, but it just takes a little bit of searching.
Yeah. It's interesting because it used to be fantasy was only written by men for boys. And so is that why you got a little pushback?
Yes, and kind of saying,
Mhm.
well, boys need to get more used to female POV characters, and I'm very for
Yeah.
that. Like that, I don't think that is the issue. Um, it's not that they don't like female characters or female POVs. I think it's just, I don't know. It's just kind of you need a story that grips them, and I think um, it's just romantasy has trickled down. There's maybe a little bit
Mhm.
more romantic threads and stuff, and I think that's the issue rather than them not wanting to read female characters, which is kind of what the pushback was when I said that.
Mm.
Um, but I don't know. It's like if a text is not interesting to a teenage boy, they will not read it.
Right.
you know,
Yes.
and so it's
Yeah.
just trying to find the right books. And actually, for my son, actually, it was he just wasn't digging fantasy. We actually had to look into a different genre, and so for him, horror was a bit more kind of what he was into. Thriller, um, with like fantasy elements and stuff. So it was just kind of thinking a bit more outside the box, where I was like, but surely like fantasy is definitely what you're gonna like because you love all the movies.
Right.
Um, but yeah, so yeah, it's just trying different things. He's actually reading oh oh my gosh, it's like a very famous movie. And he went to see it in the theater, but the name has just gone from my head. Harper Lee wrote it.
Uh, hmm.
Oh my God, it's like
I'm
it's
like,
a
I can
really, really famous
Google.
book.
Well, let me see. Harper Lee. To Kill a Mockingbird?
Yes, that is it. So he is loving that. So sometimes those older classics, I think you
Mm-hmm.
think kids aren't gonna like them, but they do. Like this is like his favorite book that he's read in a long time.
Aw.
Yeah. So I
Well,
think it's just searching. Um,
yes.
yeah, and maybe people feel the same for girls as well. I don't know. I'm just in a position where I've got three boys, and
Yeah.
yeah, I feel it's been a little bit harder.
I have two boys too. But they're very little, very little. They're reading Captain Underpants. So
Yes, that was a huge hit in our house with Captain Underpants, and is it Dog Man?
yes.
Is another one. And I actually think those kind of like graphic novels, kind of
Hmm.
they are great for boys as well. I
Hmm.
think 'cause it's more visual. And I know there's a book coming out by Soman Chinani, and is it called Young World? And he's talking a lot about his book being very visual, and it's a
Hmm.
YA book. And I'm like, I wonder, is that like the way we need to go a little bit with teenagers because the way they're assessing and accessing technology and social media, they kind of need more visuals now. I don't know.
Hmm.
It's
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah, no, it's definitely, I think for any, even adults, finding something that, like I feel like everyone likes to read, they just don't necessarily know what they like to read. And once you, experience and try and find it, you can find some books that would be definitely that you would like to read. But sometimes not every book's for everyone, some
Oh,
people can't read slower paced stories. They need those faster paced to keep their attention. And so I think, but once you start reading, and then you can kind of branch out and then you can start reading more diversely, and so like you kind of have to get your kids hooked first, and then we can say, okay, well, let's try expanding our reading a little bit.
that's it. And do you know what? Like, and I think it's just finding the book that hooks them is the problem, or it can be the
Hmm.
problem. And that's like, don't give up. Like, just keep searching. There will be a book series out there that your kids will really get into. But I think that my
Yes.
thing was, it's there's loads of middle grade that's fabulous. I think it's kind of once you move up to the YA adult stuff is where it can be difficult. And I think actually the YA age bracket is like 12 to 18, but actually adults like to read YA as well. And maybe that's
Mhm.
sort of an issue. Like we almost need like a lower YA and an upper YA.
And I think that they're trying to do that. Like, there's like
Yeah.
a new adult is like kind of like a new
Yes.
genre. So,
Yeah, I think that's maybe coming into it as well. It's like, because when I go into the YA section, I'm overwhelmed a little bit. Like there's so much, and I'm kind of like,
hmm.
what's suitable for like a 12 or 13-year-old as opposed to what maybe would be suitable for like a 17. 16, 17, 18-year olds. I'm not quite sure. It takes a lot of research, I think. Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, and YA also is sometimes used as like a publisher marketing tool. And so oftentimes who gets labeled as YA is usually women authors too.
Yes.
And
Yes.
so I can see that sometimes maybe like it's a YA, it's marketed as YA, but maybe it is for more adult audience. But since it's a woman author, they kind of publish it or they market it as YA as opposed to adult,
Yeah,
So
I know. I heard Fonda Lee talk about that, and I think like I have a few author friends who've talked about being told that their book was YA and they did not really think it was YA at all.
yes.
There's adult themes there, and I think the thing that seems to push you down into YA is having a female protagonist, it is being a female author, and it is if there's romance involved, right? But
Mhm.
that's um, that's kind of wrong. And I don't know, I guess the publishers say, well, it's just a marketing tool. It's just the bookshelves that you're being placed into a bookstore. It's not that important, but it is important, I think.
It's so important.
Yeah, yeah, no, it is. And I know with my books, no one suggested YA to me, but if anybody had, I would have been like, I would have fought tooth and nail for it. It is not a
Right.
YA story.
No,
Um,
no, I would definitely see your story could not, I don't think, ever be considered YA. But I was reading, I don't read a lot of Brandon Sanderson, and he's like a big name in fantasy, right? But I read his first book, Mistborn, and to me, that's a YA book. Like, that's a YA story for sure. And I think even Brandon Sanderson himself said that if he was a female author, that that would have been marketed as a YA story
yes,
too.
yeah,
So, maybe a part of the issue of like feeling like there's not like stories more geared towards male authors or young A is or YA, I'm sorry, is that there are authors that are not being labeled as YA and there's authors being labeled as YA and maybe that's why it's a little difficult,
Do you know,
possibly.
that's a really good point because Mistborn is such a good series. Like Brandon does write female characters really well, and I know he's got is it Lynn? Who is that? Or Vin? Is that the
Then,
yeah? So she's a fantastic female protagonist, and there's obviously male POV characters in there as well. And so yes, I think you're right. Like male authors have been pushed out of YA, female authors have been pushed down, and I think the right mix of books are not being fed to the right people.
right.
Yeah.
hmm I always kind of stay away from a lot of parents will ask me, like is this appropriate for this? And I am so wary to say that, especially as a teacher too. And I'm like, I don't know, like that's something that you will kind of have to decide as a parent yourself, So I do think it's hard, all of the marketing and what is YA, what is not YA, and there's not even really clear definitions of like what YA is. It's kind of like feelings a little bit, and so I definitely can sympathize with you of how difficult it would possibly be to try to find, stories for that age group.
Yeah, and all kids are different. That's the other thing.
Right.
What my two older children are the opposite, right? Um, my older one, like he's really into drama and into movies, and he's very creative, and he's quite old for his age. And he always has been. He's always been like an old soul. And then my middle son is like, if there's a book about farts, he will read it, you know. And so like I don't know, like uh, you know, they're going to read completely different books. And so yes, it's just trying to find the right ones. It's hard, but you know what? We have loads of fun, and the best thing is I love taking them to the libraries because
Yeah.
there it's free. It's like go and pick 5 books, bring them home, and we'll see.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. Totally. All right, let's go ahead and let's talk about era two. So we have. Do you consider the Gale song to be all of your stories, or do you have era one or era two?
Yeah, so in my head, it's era 1 and 2. Now, there
Okay.
is like an overarching arc, I guess, because some of the same
hmm
characters are in both eras,
Right.
without giving too much away. So, era one is the
Yes.
children of gods and fighting men, the words of kings and prophets, and the land of the living and the dead, plus the 3 novellas,
hmm
which is Dreams of Fire, Dreams of
Yes.
Sorrow, and Dreams of Chaos. And then era two starts with Daughter of the Otherworld, and the second book is going to be Son of the Serpents, and there's a third book to come out next year as well. And then that will be that trilogy, which
Ooh.
will end. the kind of the Gael song.
Okay. Okay, and then so you have your first trilogy, your second trilogy, which I'm so excited that's going to come out next year. That would be because I know a lot of people who really enjoyed the Gale song. They have not read Daughters of No Worlds yet because they wanted there to be, a book two. They didn't want to be left without a book one, and so then to know
Yeah.
that's going to wrap up soon is nice.
Yes, I know. Well, that's the battle I think every fantasy author is facing is people don't like to read or buy series anymore until they
Yes,
know it's getting finished. Won't give any names.
yes.
And you know the
Thank
thing
you,
is,
George R. R. Martin.
yes, I know, sorry. But do you know, it's so hard. Like creativity is difficult.
Mhm.
And I don't like it when like George gets kind of piled on social
Me
media.
too.
He can only write as fast as he can write. He can only write when the creativity is there. Um, but it has kind of impacted newer authors where people really do want to see that a series is completing. So if there's like a completion date and the last book's about to come out, people will start to read then. So I know with Era
Right.
One, my sales soared once book three came out because people were like, "Oh,
Hmm.
she's finished the first era. Like, let's read it
Yeah.
now." Yeah, but yeah, so that's okay. I completely understand why people do that. I also kind of almost do that myself because I can't retain a story if I've started the first one like 5 years
Mhm.
ago and the new one's coming. Like, I'd have to reread,
Yes.
right? So I know a lot of people, they're like, "No, I want to read the
Hmm.
whole series together like in one go so I don't
Right.
like lose information and context, which is fine. But yeah, so book two, it's handed into my publishers. I'm starting book three now for era two. So I can pretty much guarantee that the series will be completed
Yes.
and handed in.
Yes, and I totally agree with you. I live in New Mexico, which is where George R. R. Martin also lives in New Mexico, and he is just such like New Mexico. I don't know how much you know about the United States, but we are a small state. We are overlooked always. We're a poor state too, and so George R. R. Martin, he brings a lot to the table for New Mexico. He
Yes.
does a lot for New Mexico residents, and so I feel very protective of George. And I do when I post stuff, people really do want to read completed series, but I am the opposite. I kind of like to be, like, oh, there's a release date. When's there a title? Oh, now there's a cover. And I kind of like being, along for the ride, but I know that a lot of people don't like to do that.
Yeah. Do you know, I love that too. And like, this is pre even the series came out. I was on like Game of Thrones or Song of Ice and Fire forums where we would be like talking about theories and, like who's Jon Snow's mother. All those
Yeah.
threads were there, and like you would debate, like, could it be this person? Is it this person? And like,
Mhm.
Daenerys' prophecies that she has, like, what do they mean? Like, I loved that, right? And you can only do that if the last book's not out because then you can't theorize anymore. And I
Yeah.
know like whenever the Harry Potter series was coming out, before the last book came out, there was a huge amount like in
Hmm.
our friendship groups of like, oh, like what's going to happen and what does the Deathly
Yeah.
Hallows mean? We've never heard that, and that's part of the fun. But I guess that
Yeah.
was like probably pre social media, like the internet existed, but
Mhm.
pre that stage. And yeah, theorizing things was half the fun of reading.
Hmm.
And so that's, I'm
Yes.
protective of George R. R. Martin too. Like Game of Thrones, Song of Ice and Fire is really one of the best fantasy series out there. His writing is so good. I have had so
Yes.
much enjoyment reading it, watching it. I loved and like the Seven Kingdoms. I thought that was fabulous. So my fingers are crossed that George, I think he is writing it, and we're going to get it someday. And I'm prepared to wait for it. Yeah.
I have accepted that we're probably not going to get it, and I'm just excited that we got to read, those five books. I think that they changed so much of fantasy, and I
Mm.
that's what I loved about reading your book so much because it really felt to me as politically, nuanced and intriguing and fast-paced for me as reading Game of Thrones. Obviously, there's not as many POVs, and it's like a Game of Thrones had like more kingdoms at play, but it was so reminiscent to me, and I love when I find a series because I love Game of Thrones so much. It's one of my
Yeah,
favorite fantasy series ever, and so that was a big draw for me. Why I love that series, your series, so much.
yeah. Well, definitely like George has cited European history as being a source,
Yes.
and I definitely can see that in his books. And that's the thing I loved about his book. And it's funny, like whenever you read, you take bits and pieces of things that you love. And so for me,
Mm-hmm.
A Song of Ice and Fire was an inspiration, and it wasn't the dragons, it was the political maneuvering,
Right.
and I loved that about A Song of Ice and Fire. Like George R. R. Martin does that so well. And then
Mm-hmm.
it was more kind of Irish books that kind of was another source of inspiration, and you're kind of pulling it all together and making your own painting, I guess, out of your inspirations.
For sure. So you're gonna be finishing with Gail's song. Do you have any ideas planned for any other books?
Yes, so I have sold a new series, but I don't. Oh, it's kind of it was announced in a magazine, but it's like a paywall, so I don't think many people know about it yet. But yeah, so I have sold a duology. Um,
Oh.
Yeah, which is completely separate. It's not Song related at all. I would, it kind of got described as House of the Dragon meets Bridgerton.
Oh.
Yeah, so just completely different vibes. So
Is it
that's,
still historic?
no,
No?
no,
Ooh,
it's not historical. It's completely made up. Um, so I'm excited about that. I'm
me
hoping,
too.
yeah, I'm hoping we can start to talk about that a little bit later. But I think contracts aren't quite finalized and all that sort of stuff yet. So, yep, so there is definitely a new series for me coming out. But there's lots of other ideas I have, lots of other books.
Hmm.
Maybe more in Gael's Song, but as a prequel as opposed to a sequel, like maybe go back a lot earlier in
Hmm.
history. But yeah, but there's a huge amount of things that I want to work on.
I love to hear that because I love your writing, and so you're an auto-buy author for me, so I would love to read anything that you write for sure.
Yeah, do you know it's hard though because I know like a lot of people when they ask me about doing another historical fantasy series have been like, oh, you could do like a Viking one or like one in Norway. But for me, it's quite hard. Whenever you're doing historical fantasy, so much research has
Hmm.
to be done. So it's
Hmm.
not actually even just the history, it is like the culture, the language, it can be religion. There's so much research has gone into Gelsong that to do it in another culture that I'm not familiar with, that has like different languages, different customs, I think it would be quite hard for me to do. So I think that's why, like in terms of historical fantasy, I would only really do Irish, possibly
Hmm.
English, like but kind of within roughly like where I am. Um, yeah, so maybe like Arthurian, like Arthur legends and stuff like that. But I really feel to go further would be difficult, because I don't think I would have the knowledge base to write it correctly, which is
Hmm.
important to me. So if my historical fantasy um, is limited, I kind of, you have to explore other subgenres and other things, which is good because I love straightforward historical fiction and I love fantasy, like epic fantasy. So yeah, I'll definitely be looking at those genres as well.
So you bet you wouldn't stay in the fantasy genre or even historical fiction is really where you see yourself writing your future stories?
Yeah, because I think with Gail, I could write more Gail song, but I think that's my Irish stuff done.
Yeah.
Yeah, and as I said, I just think it would be too difficult for me to write another culture and to do it accurately. Like I would have to move there, like for a period of
Yeah.
time to feel that I would be ingrained enough in the culture to even
Hmm.
contemplate it. Um, because I know with Gelsong, I know how hard it's been to get that right. There's
Hmm.
like it's literally been years and years of research,
Yeah.
um, even before I began to write it. So I wouldn't want to do anything less for any other
Hmm.
culture, if that makes sense.
It does make sense. So what about romantasy is huge in the fantasy space right now. Would you ever see yourself writing a romantasy?
Well, the duology I've sold, I wouldn't say it's like a straightforward romantasy, but there is romance in it. I'm
More
terrible.
so.
I'm always like giving myself my own subgenres because I actually think the Gael song, it's not really historical fantasy. It's like historical mythological fantasy.
Hmm.
But that like doesn't exist. So for the duology I wrote, I really feel like it's like epic fantasy with romance is the way I would describe it.
Like, would you say it's a subplot, a romantic subplot?
Mm, it's not a subplot, but it is like it's not the over it, I don't know. I can't I find it hard to describe. There is romance in it, of course, but the romance isn't the be all and end all of any character's journey, if that makes
You know,
sense.
that is interesting that because like I am such an advocate for women fantasy authors who don't write romantasy, that it's like romantasy is not like, because like with romantasy, when you read a true romantasy, you're like, no, that's it. It's a romance book in a fantasy setting. But oftentimes women authors, like right now, we're trying to figure out, oh, well, is it a romantasy? Is it not a romantasy? But there are so many male authors who have romance as a major part of like their character's point, but we're not arguing if it's romantasy, or not, or trying to figure out if it is or if it's not. So I
Yeah.
think that's interesting, that like, okay, so it's an epic fantasy, but there's a lot of readers who want to read romance, and so like we kind of feel like we have to like, hey, that there's romance in here, you too, so like you may like this.
Yes, and the romantasy genre I think is expanding.
Hmm.
I think, people want to see things slightly differently as
Yeah.
well. We don't like a Court of Thorns and Roses obviously is a huge favorite, but and people like to read books a bit like it until they don't, and then they want something new.
Hmm.
So whenever I wrote this story, and I did want to have romance in it, but I wanted the romance to be my way. So
Yeah.
again, like bye bye toxic boyfriends, they don't exist in my book. If you're a romantic character, you have to be romantic.
Hmm.
But also for the female characters, they are not waiting there for like to be rescued. And,
Yeah.
no, they have got things that they want to do and they have their own agency and they will do them with or without a romantic partner to do it with.
Right.
And so for me, it was I wanted to write something with dragons. I wanted it to be epic. I wanted a really cool world. Um, and maybe I would almost say it's I don't know if you've read War and Peace, but you know the way in War and Peace you have the huge backdrop of a big war is happening, but then there's lots of affairs between all the princes and princesses and lots of scandal and all
Yes.
of that. I also wanted that to be in it. So it's kind
uh
of, yeah.
Shauna, I'm gonna need that. Do you need a beta reader? um do you need anyone to balance it? I need to read this right now, actually.
Well, I could send it to you if you wanted to read it. But it's like it hasn't been edited yet by my publisher. It's been accepted, but I'm sure bits and pieces will change. But yeah, no, if you wanted to read my draft that has been sent into the publisher, you could.
Uh, yeah, absolutely. I would love to do. Oh my gosh, no, that sounds so good. Listen, I read your series, like I had to force myself because I read lots of other stuff. I have to read this, and I had to force myself to not just back to back to back to read your series so much. And anyone that's listening, the Gale song is not a romantasy, but it had a romantic subplot in there that had me like biting my knuckle. I loved him so much. I'm not gonna say who it is just because, but I really loved him. And so if you're gonna write even a more romantic forward story, I'm like, sign me all the way up. I would
Yeah.
love to read that.
Yes, and I loved that romantic subplot so much. It was so important for both of the characters, um, that they had that, and I think because love had been missing for both of them, and they really found it with each other. But I did really love that it was a slow burn, and I know,
Yes.
like, because it doesn't really kick off in book one. I think there's like
Right.
hints, but it gets going in book two.
Mhm.
But again, that's life, and again, I think that was, when you read books and there's things you like and things you don't like. There was this kind of a trope sometimes in romance that there's that instant attraction, and then the
Right.
story, and I don't like that, because I kind of feel sometimes that's where, in real life, that's where mistakes get made. And
Yeah.
yeah, and the slow burn is better. The quality of the man's always better with a slow burn romance. So that's my favorite.
Absolutely. I've loved just chatting with you. I'm like, I have questions and I want to ask you some of them. Do you have any tour info? And a lot of your fans were asking if you had tour info for The Son of the Serpent.
Yes. So my Belfast book launch will be on the release day. It's on the Thursday, the 10th of September. So that'll be Waterstones in Belfast. I'm getting a date for Dublin penciled in. We're just talking a bit back and forth about the dates at the minute. So there will be one in Dublin. I have a date in Waterford, which is at the end of September as well. So basically, if
Mhm.
you're in Ireland, there'll be like several events, hopefully, that you can come to. I am trying to get over to FantasyCon, which is in Scotland this year. I think it's October, November time. So if you can't make it to Ireland, but Scotland's easier to get to, I will be there. So there are the dates so far. I would love to do like more touring and to speaking to people. So maybe with the third book comes out and it's the end, I will try to do a bit more and maybe come over to like America as well.
I would love that. I know that a lot of people don't realize that, authors don't really have control over, touring. It's usually their publisher is who is in control of that, and it goes by need. And I think you deserve your book to be read by so many people. I think that there's so many people who like different, if you like historic fantasy, or even fiction, I think that you will find books that you like in here. If you are someone who likes romantasy, I think that you can enjoy this story as well. It's fast paced enough, and that there is a subplot of romance. And so I think that your story can be enjoyed by so many people. And so I will not stop talking about it. And I hope one day that you get to be the level of success that I think that you should be, which is a lot.
Oh, well, thank you so much. And like, I've had a lot of people posting about it, and I know you've bullied like loads of people into reading, and it does help. The series, as I said, it really kicked off once the third book came out, and it's kind of really grown since then. So that word,
Yeah.
like word of mouth, is so important, especially for series
Yes.
that are not like the big lead, shiny lead title, when it
Yeah.
gets released. And especially as well when you're a series, like lots of series is just die.
Hmm.
Kind of by even by the time the second book is out, they're dead already because no one
Hmm.
has given them a chance. So I'm just delighted that people are finding the Gael song now, and the popularity is increasing. I get like messages all the time from people who've read it. And so yes, just thank you. Like the social media community, especially on Instagram, has been so good to me. And it really does make a difference. So I know I see a lot of posts recently about people being, I'm not sure if my social media account is making an impact, views are down, the algorithm changes. But my message to you is it definitely does help, like because I'm at the other
Yeah.
end and I'm seeing my sales go up.
Aw. Well, yeah, no, social media can be hard too. And, I really do feel like a lot of people got introduced into the fantasy genre from A Court in Thorns and
Oh yeah,
Roses. And so like, they're reading through, and like romantasy is such a new genre, and like, there is a fast fashion nature to it. So people are reading through, what the catalog that they have, which is not very a lot right now, and then they're branching out, and so I really try to like make my account as like, and I read mostly women fantasy authors, and I think that that is a good bridge for people who are trying to find, different stories, not necessarily romance, but they want to have some kind of subplot in there. And I'm like, I think I think your book series could be a good, bridge to getting into reading different fantasy.
yeah, yeah. No, no, that's great. And a lot of my like author friends, I know Ryan Cahill has said this himself many times, like romantasy is brilliant. Like romantasy
Yeah.
has brought loads and loads of people in, um,
Hmm.
and it's fabulous. Like, and he kind of was like, once Fourth Wing came in and people were like, oh, I like the dragons actually in Fourth Wing, and then they've given
Hmm.
him his series a go.
Yeah.
And so mine's the same thing as like if you're reading a romantasy and you're like, oh, I like the court intrigue or I like a
Hmm.
slow burn romance, yes, then you're right. Like my series is a kind of different flavor, I guess, for
Hmm.
you to try next. And so I think romantasy is great. I don't like it when people try to diminish it or to
Right.
say it's like a lesser genre. It's not. I think that's crazy talk. All the
Yes.
books out there are, as you say, they're for different people. People like different books, and the
Hmm.
more the more options you have, the better, right?
Yeah. Yeah, totally. I think that is so cool. And I got to meet Ryan in December, and I think that he is just a really great, I haven't read his books yet, but I know that I've read Aragon, they're up there, and I love Aragon
Oh,
so
you'll love
much. That's
them.
one of my
Yeah.
Yes, and so I know that that was a big inspiration for him. So, what fantasy archetype would Shauna Lawless be? If you were put into a fantasy book, what's your archetype?
So is this like queen or kind of witch or that sort of
Yeah.
thing? Yeah.
Or, healer or are you the I there's a whole bunch of fantasy archetypes, but
Yeah.
you get to pick. You get to pick your character.
Yeah. Okay. I think having written Gormla for so long, I think I could be a good queen.
Not the bad one, the good one.
No, no, yeah, yeah. I would be good. I can see all her mistakes and I would learn from them and I would be a good queen. But also I'm very drawn to Fola and her being a healer because I
Oh.
think, it's funny in the second era, sorry, in the first era, healer is almost looked down upon as being kind of
Mhm.
useless or you can
Yeah.
only really help the mortals. This isn't an interesting gift. But in the second era, because things have changed, suddenly being a healer is a really good thing, right?
Yeah.
And like
It's
as
useful.
as an actual mother with kids, and I know you've young kids. When my kids were young, I was constantly, anytime they got fevers or anything, I would have been hardly even able to sleep. I'd have been like watching them all night to make sure they were okay. And so in real life, healer is like the number one thing that you would actually want to do because then everyone around you would always be healthy and safe.
Yeah. Yeah, health is wealth for
Yeah.
sure. So, we've been on for a while, but there's a couple questions I want to get to for sure. So, first of all, do you have any advice for any aspiring authors? And what are some big challenges that you've had with writing? Are you a full-time author now?
Um, okay, so advice to authors who are maybe trying to break in now or getting started um, would be read loads. And I would say something that really helped me is I joined a critique group, which was online, because I live in a very small town in Ireland, and so I couldn't, and I had babies, and so I could never go anywhere. So I joined an online critique group. It's called Critique Circle, and it's free, by the way. And see, having people critique your work, and then also you critiquing other people's work is really, really helpful when you're in your early stages of writing to kind of see what you're doing wrong, um, what other people are doing wrong. Because sometimes you learn the most from reading something someone's done and it doesn't work for you, and then you have to think why. What's really cool, do you know the author Abby Jimenez? Who,
Yes.
yes, so I met her on Critique Circle and I read all her books, and she read my book that never got published because it was rubbish. But yeah, so like lots of people go onto those sites in their early days trying to kind of hone their craft. And I
Hmm.
think that's ever more important because AI is obviously on the rise. I'm sure if you're a young author, it's very tempting to go onto AI and try to get it to create things for you. You will never learn
Or
how,
even critique.
yeah,
Or even critique.
yeah, but you will never learn how to write and progress if you're reliant on AI. You'll
Yes.
get to a certain level probably and you will never move on. You really need human feedback. You need to kind of see what
Hmm.
is clicking, what emotions are being, like what how people are emoting and feeling and reacting. Sometimes what you think might be a good reaction. Sometimes people have very negative reactions, and you can't get that from AI, I don't think.
Mm-hmm.
And you certainly cannot learn to write with AI. So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, so getting feedback from humans is key. That'd be like my number one advice. And then in terms of writing myself in hardship, well, I became a full-time writer once The Children of Gods and Fighting Men was released, and I had
Mm-hmm.
finished writing the words of Kings and Prophets. And I wasn't making enough money at that stage, really, to be a full-time author. But the kind of weird thing was because I had my three children and they were quite young, my childcare costs were like really high. And so whenever I did my sums, the money I was making from my books was the same as working minus childcare.
Mm-hmm.
And so me and my husband talked about it, and he was like, "Well, look, why don't you just take a 2 years, and just see how it goes? And if after 2 years it doesn't kick off and it doesn't take off and you don't like it anymore, you can get another job. But while you're on a bit of a roll, um, maybe see if you take the 2 years, will it work for you?" And for me, that was probably the best decision I made because speed is a thing in the publishing industry. Like, you do need to have a book out every year in the fantasy genre. And I knew, because I just finished The Words of Kings and Prophets, I knew how big a task lay ahead in the land of the living and the dead. And
Mm-hmm.
I would not have completed it in time if I was still working.
Yeah.
So for me, it was kind of a gamble that paid off.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously now I've got new contracts, new books coming out, so I'm able to stay as a full-time writer,
Mm-hmm.
which has been lovely. I think probably the biggest challenge is letting people know that your book is out there. I do try,
Marketing.
yeah, market, I really do try with social media, but I'm not a natural at it.
Mm.
Um, but I still make myself do it, and I love actually talking and interacting with people. That's not the problem. It's just the content creation. Like, sometimes I'm like, I'm not quite sure how to talk about something that I've created. Like, I can talk about other people's books all day long,
Yeah.
but it can be hard to talk about yourself sometimes. Um, so that can be the harder bit, and I think it's something, unless you're a massive lead title and you're having a huge amount of publisher support,
Yeah.
or unless you're like a celebrity or you're kind of famous for a specific thing, you have got to learn to use social media somehow. You have to use
Yeah.
some sort of format or iteration of it, really, to reach people.
I think that is a big challenge, even when it comes to authors. Nowadays, it's not even just like, oh, you got picked up traditionally, but you still kind of have to market it. And you kind of see publishers are picking up books that authors already kind of have a social media following for. And so,
That's definitely the case, I think, for like, especially if it's indie crossover. So you were indie and now
hmm
you're being moved into trad. They are definitely looking at followers and like
hmm
sales and all that stuff. I think if you have written a really good book and you don't have a social media presence, you can still get published.
hmm
If the quality, like, the quality of the book is there. But there is
yeah,
like, there's just, again, I get pushed back on this as well because I know some authors really don't like that the marketing has been pushed onto them, you know,
yeah,
because we are not marketers, we're writers,
right.
and that's kind of the craft that you're buying from us. And I totally get that sentiment. Like, I do.
hmm
But then I'm also like, but it's not 1980 anymore.
right.
And that is not the reality that we are living in. And the reality is that in the 1980s, you just had traditional publishing and you just had bookstores that sold your
hmm
books. And now we have traditional publishing and we have indie publishing, which is fabulous. I have lots of indie writer friends who I adore, and their books are fantastic. But with the kind of influx of choice, um,
hmm
it's harder to make your voice heard, I guess.
yeah,
That's a challenge.
hmm
And I want there to be an um, indie space. So if I want there to be an
hmm
indie space, I have to accept that there is like 10 times the number of books being published every year compared to what they used to be.
right.
And with that then comes the need to market your own book a little bit. Because see as well, if you look at any publisher's social media, it it's actually hard for them to do it. They don't get maybe a lot of traction unless it's like a giveaway or like a cover reveal or
Hmm.
something like really exciting. And so because people want personal content and they want to know about your journey, you kind of have to do some of that yourself. And you know, so,
Totally.
yeah, and social media, the thing is about social media is it's social, right? So it's
Yeah.
not just putting a Canva post up, it's actually interaction and talking to people and like talking to people about your
Hmm.
books and stuff. And that's a bit I love. Like I as you can guess, like I can talk about my books, I can talk about writing, in a way as a way of conversation very happily and
Hmm.
very easily. So I've tried to create my social media in a way that's comfortable for me,
Hmm.
you know, which is kind of very chill, easygoing, talking about books. It's like a safe space. Everybody is welcome.
Hmm.
And that's kind of how I like my own life to be, if that kind of makes sense, like
Yeah.
welcoming. You know, you don't have to do like there's about 10 different social media sites that you can use. There's one that will suit you, you know.
Yeah.
So I think it's just trying to
Totally.
find that and then trying to do your own take on social media.
Well, I have a question for you. So the with social media and book talk and bookstagram, there's a lot of book influencers now, and sometimes I hear negatively about, book influencers, like they're hyping up the wrong books or this or that. So like as an author, what is your kind of thoughts about like the book influencer space?
I think it's fabulous. Like I just think if you like a book, like if you've read A
Hmm.
Court of Thorns and Roses, like it does not need any more hype. It's already hyped to 100, but if you've enjoyed it, please do post a video about it. Like why would you not? Um, you know, I just think social media has been a really good way of getting new stories out there, diverse stories out there as well,
Hmm.
that maybe traditionally wouldn't have been given such a platform. Um, yeah, so I just think anything that you post is fabulous. I think sometimes authors have a hard time with kind of like the DNF lists or,
Oh.
you know, books I didn't enjoy lists. But I also think like that's just part of the book ecosystem. And
Hmm.
sometimes, like if somebody says I didn't like this book because there was no romance in it, or like I didn't like this book because I don't know, like it was very female led and there was no men in it. I don't know, like sometimes you get those kind of reviews where they don't like it. Sometimes that will make me buy a book, you
Yeah.
know. So what one person isn't into, like sometimes would make me think I'd like it. Or, you know, sometimes people would be, oh, I didn't like this book. It was too complicated. Like it was too political, too complicated. I couldn't get into it, which is fine, but that would
Yeah.
make me buy that book because I like
Yeah.
books to be kind of politically complicated. So no, I think it's all good. I you know, and I think the more reviews that are out there, the better. And I think again, like
Yeah.
I used to be like a blogger. I used to talk about books, and I know sometimes the algorithm kind of pushes up lists and it pushes up like top tens or top
Hmm.
fives, and the book reviews themselves are kind of not as popular.
Right.
But I think all the best reviewers do those as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, they'll do a bit of everything, and they're the people that people end up actually listening to. So yeah, so no, I'm very positive about social media. I don't think my book would have taken off without it. I think I owe an awful
Mhm.
lot to social media. And yeah, I think it's great, you know.
Yeah. No, it's interesting because I do talk, but part of my thing is I'm very honest about my books. Like if I love a book, like they know that I love that book. I'm not like faking my enjoyment of it. But I do IDNF books all the time. There's lots of books that I do not like. Like Mistborn was not one of my favorite stories, but I do think that's important because like you want people to read your book that wants to read your book, and like if someone doesn't like a political fantasy, maybe Gail Song's not for you. And so I think that's important because you don't want people to read your book and then be like, oh, I hated this 1 star.
Yeah. Yes, you know, and you know the other thing is because marketing is very much based now on categories and tropes.
Right.
My thing is that books should be sold on promises. And like
Mm.
what have I promised you in my book? And I think if you promise and you deliver on your promise, people will like the book more than
Yeah.
if you like sell it on something that's slightly wrong. So like for example, if I was
Mm.
to market my book as a romantasy, it
Right.
maybe would get more eyes on it because that's like a very popular subgenre right now.
Exactly.
But I would break my promise to you if I
Mm.
sold it to you as that it's not a romantasy.
No, so true. And like that's a big thing I've been talking to you about because we talked about women get labeled YA, but women authors also get labeled romantasy if there's
Yeah,
any romance in there at all. And then so people who are looking to read a romantasy are reading the story and then they're saying like, oh well the romance wasn't very good. It wasn't a forefront, like, like that wasn't what I was expecting, and then you get a 1-star review,
exactly. Yeah, because you've broke your promise to the reader. They were going in expecting one thing and getting another. So I just think honesty is always the best policy
Yeah.
when it comes to your book. And like I'm giving, if you want to know anything about Irish mythology, Irish history, my book is really, really good for that. Again, like the political maneuvering, a slow burn romance that you're not going to get right away, yes. But I would be lying to you if this was like high epic fantasy, and I'd be lying to you if I said it
Mhm.
was a romantasy because it's not. So I just think you have to
Right.
be, yeah, be clear about what you're actually selling, I guess.
Yeah. Well, I want to wrap. Thank you so much again for talking with me. I want to just wrap this up with me telling you how much I appreciated that not only did you show like feminine characters, but you also showed like the diversity of what it is to be a woman. You have so many different women characters in there that just really highlight the strength of women, and I just wanted to say thank you so much for including that. I think that that voice and that space is so important and not always a scene.
Yes, no, that's one of the main reasons why I wrote it. Like many, many reasons. But I think to be women, it's like at times it can be a very political thing, and there's boxes that people want you to be, and women cannot be put into boxes. We have a multitude of things that we love and adore and hate, and we're all different and have different desires, and it is important to reflect that, I think, and also to have older women as well being reflected in literature, and that life and desire does not stop once you hit like 25. All those things we still want, and obviously Fola and Gormla, they're kind of have these mythological powers which makes them older, like they can live for a much longer time.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, and so that's important too. And so I'm really glad that that's a theme that you connected with. That's really nice to hear.
Yes, I love what you said. Women cannot be put in boxes. That is a great way to end this. I totally agree. And again, thank you so much. Everyone, go read the Gael Song trilogy right now.
Yeah.